Hi. Hi, Trish. All right. Good morning. Good morning. So we have a pretty big topic today. I want to talk about the growing trend of going no contact, which this is something that if you've had, excuse me, first time talking today. So if you have ever had to go no contact, you probably know that's a pretty big decision, but it's getting a lot of traction right now. And I think that there's this kind of black and white thinking, and it's a bit more of a complex issue. So I want to start this conversation by saying something really clearly. I've been on all sides of this. I've been the person who needed the distance. I've been the person trying to hold a relationship together. And I've been the person on the receiving end of somebody else pulling away. And I can tell you that none of these positions are simple. There's a version of this conversation happening right now online that makes it feel very black and white, like the answer is obvious. Like once you label someone as toxic, the path forward is clear. But in real life, that's rarely the case. It's not really that clean. There's love, there's history, there's pain, there's patterns, and there's usually a part of us that isn't as clear as we think we are. So today I wanted to slow this whole conversation down. There's no judgment at all around what we have done or what we haven't done. It's just an exploration around options and a possibility for deeper growth. So this is going to be a nuanced conversation. There's no one size fits all answer. Personally, I've had people in my life that were so toxic that going no contact was actually both a risk to my safety and necessary at the same time. I've had people like my mother who I've gone no contact with off and on for most of my adult life, which was in a large part due to the fact that my siblings were all much younger than me. So I had always this dream that I would be able to rescue them. So in order to have a relationship with them, to be able to see them, I had to allow my mother access to me. And typically, what would happen is I would do that. Things would be relatively fine in the beginning. And then over time, things would just build and build to the point where there was some huge drama and I wasn't safe to be around her anymore and I would have to cut her off again. So sorry, my voice is really froggy still. And that was really hard because stepping away from my mother meant I was stepping away from my siblings who I loved very much. So I also want to note that there is a significant difference between going no contact with a family member or a friend versus going no contact with ex partners. What's really interesting is that in my experience, people struggle more with going no contact with ex partners than they do with going no contact with family. So that's a whole other conversation, but it's just something to note. But the thing is, here is we're not here today to judge our decisions. We're just here to understand them. And look, family relationships are complicated. Most of us on all sides of the aisle are doing the best we can with what we know. So I am curious at some point to find out, how many of you have considered going no contact or how many of you experienced it from the other side. Now, I know some of you are driving, so maybe that's not a good thing to try and answer that question. But yeah, maybe you can put it in the chat. So this is trending right now. And I think that there's a lot of reasons that this is trending. I think that there's more awareness around trauma, uh, around narcissism, around emotional abuse. What's also interesting is that 9% of the US population has a personality disorder that is due to a rise in personality disorders or possibly due to a rise in more diagnostics, right? More people are getting help with mental health issues and being diagnosed. But the truth is that personality disorders tend to be passed down both genetically and environmentally. So offering help to people who are suffering from them is paramount. But the problem is that that can be tricky because people with personality disorders typically don't seek help because seeking help would be admitting that there's something wrong with them. And that's something that they're trying desperately for people not to see. If they do seek help, often they will find a therapist they can win over and fire anyone who sees through their stories. They can turn on the person or people who are trying to help them and try to cause them harm in some way. Or my personal favorite is when um, people can use the fact that they're seeing a therapist as a weapon to wield or a grabbing of power in a relationship dynamic by saying things like, well, my therapist says that you should XYZ, or my therapist says I need more support from you. So I think we may have all experienced somebody like that at some point. But the good news is that things like borderline personality disorder, some of these personality disorders that used to be considered untreatable are now having improved outcomes with targeted treatments. So it's not all hope is lost. The problem is that a lot of times people don't seek the treatment. So other things that are, I think, contributing to going no contact becoming a trend and this whole thing around personality disorders is social media, right? There's evidence that there is a strong correlation between social media and the fueling of personality disorders like narcissism, borderline personality disorder, and antisocial traits. There's actually a recent study that links social media to delusional disorders. The whole subject of social media and our mental health is a topic for another day, but it is relevant here because people reference social media as reasons to cut ties. Like sometimes people are angry at what other people are posting and will cut ties with someone. Social media contributes to black and white thinking. It boils things down to very right, wrong, black and white, where most things are much more nuanced and exist in the gray area. It's taken, and it's also taken over psychological terms and uses them as weapons or to fuel this kind of self-focused thinking. You see things like, oh, I got to protect my peace, and I have to, and so look, here's the thing about this, right? Terry Real talks about this. Most of the self-help world uses language that is meant to bring up someone who has given away their power, right? Who is on the bottom of a power dynamic. And it's to support them to take more space up for themselves and to start being accountable to themselves. But that same language will be used to hold power by someone who is power over, by someone who has a position of being on top with the power. So things like protecting my peace and those types of comments would be used to confuse the other person and to put the person who is actually in the power view to create the view of them as not being in power and the person on the bottom as being trying to take power from them. So if you're confused, it's a very confusing situation, right? It's very confusing to be in. It creates cognitive disorders, which means like you don't know if you're crazy, you don't know what's real and what's not. So social media is fueling this. And there's this shift towards, I think, because people have moved so much, we don't grow up in the same neighborhood so much anymore. A lot of people move away. There's a little bit more of a focus on the individual over family and community. And I think that we're seeing also this pull back towards people wanting more community, wanting to be more a part of a group and have belonging. So if we jump to no contact, that could be actually getting in the way of having some kind of continuation of our community. Because awareness is good, but interpretation of all of this matters. I'm not saying, to be clear, that going no contact is not warranted. When you're in situations with ongoing abuse, whether it's emotional, physical, or psychological, if you're dealing with someone who does repeated boundary violations with no repair and no accountability, if your contact with someone causes harm to you, and if at the end of the day, you are affected in a real way by this person, and over a long period of time, you've not seen any capacity for accountability or change, then maybe that's a reason that going no contact would be best for you. But this is about safety, not so much preference. So I want to explore first of all, does anybody have any questions? Sharon, just have to unmute yourself.
Was it Sharon that had a question or Trish?
Sharon. I think Sharon. Oh no, sorry, Trish. Sorry. I was looking at the wrong name. Okay. Trish. There you go. Sorry, Sharon. Sharon's like, I didn't raise my hand. What are you talking about? Okay. If I could unmute you, I would. There you
Okay,
go.
I figured it out.
All
Sorry.
right.
Um, how does one get to the place where you figure out that you need to go no contact? Like just the thought of it for me makes me so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I could never even think of that.
You know what's funny is that when when I had to go no contact with my mother um was before it was more socially understanded, let's say. So I dealt with a lot of people like being very judgmental because they couldn't understand like how they couldn't understand how someone could have a mother so toxic that they would cut them out of their life. That seems so mean, basically, or selfish. But they just couldn't comprehend what kind of toxic we're talking about. And and this is what I'm going to get into today, and we're all going to get into because that's exactly the question that I want to help people have the ability, the tools to look at for themselves and decide. And look, just like with setting boundaries, you don't have to make this big announcement, right? Like, I'm cutting you out, right? I'm cutting you off. I think that the best way to approach it is to first let me really look at like the pros and cons of this person being in my life, like how I see it as far as how it affects me. How do I feel around this person? Where's the positives? Like, where are there areas that I get good stuff back? And are there areas that just drain me to no end, that feel like I'm getting, you know, browbeaten to death? And what I suggest you do is that you start making shifts that reduce the amount of time and energy that gets drained by this person and only have the openings for the things that do still keep connection, right? Still keep that relational energy. So, what that might look like is, let's say you have a friend that overdrinks, and you every time you go out to dinner with them or you go out with them, it turns into you babysitting, or you're either babysitting them or you're dealing with like crazy outbursts, or they get completely annihilated and you're having to have people help you get them to the car, and you don't want to deal with that anymore. So instead of looking at cutting that person out, you change what you're available for. So now this is a person I'm going to go to breakfast with, right? This is a friend I'm going to meet for coffee. I'll meet them for a hike during the day. I'm not going to put myself in a position where I don't want to be. And then you see, right? Is that shift enough? Does that change things? Are they still over drinking at 9 a.m.? Like, I don't know. You don't know, but you'll find out. Sometimes it could be that you have good, decent conversations on the phone, but in person, it's harder. Maybe maybe a parent critiques the way you look in person, or there's an energy about it that's just much heavier. Then that's a good time to go, okay, I'm going to limit being there in person and do more on the phone. The phone's great because they can't see what's going on, right? So if you're on the phone with someone who is draining you, who is going into a direction that you don't want to go, Oh man, hey, there's somebody at the door, right? I'm sorry, I gotta go. Can I call you later? You pattern interrupt. A lot of people I work with who have older parents talk about this need and desire to keep a relationship with them, but that these calls that they do are just draining. They're so draining. So, and then you find out, well, I find out how long are these calls? Well, an hour, 2 hours. I'm like, okay, like let's try shorter phone calls. Let's try um, maneuvering the conversation, saying things that we don't talk vulnerably, right? We just generally don't. So we would probably get more frustrated with someone who, let's say, wants to go into politics. Like we have a parent who wants to go into politics, and maybe we don't see eye to eye on politics, right? So we will then maybe argue or push back or just, grit our teeth and bear it versus saying, hey, would you mind if we don't talk politics? I know that it matters a lot to you. I know it's an important topic. I know all of those things, but I feel like I'm inundated with it everywhere. And I would just like to talk to you about what's going on in your life. Or so that's a soft way of starting to shift, right? Now they might go, oh, I can't, like I can't talk now. Like now you're going to police my talk. Like I'm going to go to like the harder ones, the worst case scenarios, right? But that's not what I said, right? That's not what I said. Of course, I want to talk to you. This is actually me wanting to talk to you, right? And if they have a reaction, then you just go, you seem upset. I get it. I truly like to take accountability for anything that could possibly be mine. I'm not taking accountability for other people, but I'm taking accountability for anything that could be mine. So, in other words, I might say, look, maybe I said that wrong. And I'm sorry that you got that, what I said upset you, but it's probably best at this point that we just, hang up and let's talk tomorrow, same time. You want to have that reconnect. You don't want to be like, so I'm going to go, boom, right? Because then that feels retaliatory, right? Like now I'm going to punish you. So just right now, seem upset. Let's talk tomorrow. I love you, right? I love you. Hope you have a great day. We'll talk tomorrow. Do you feel the difference in that versus maybe if you're in something where you're now trying to defend or get through or grit? Like the difference in that is expansive. Does that make sense? Or do you have, if Trish, if you have a specific like example you could use or a general example?
No, I think that your definition, I mean, your scenarios that you just did were perfect and actually felt like it was tailored to my situation because, like, the thought of just cutting my mother off
Mm-hmm.
completely is so, it feels so wrong. But,
Yeah.
but I like your suggestions of just saying, like, kind of talking for a shorter amount of time, staying away from certain topics, or I have the luxury of my son, which is my mom's soft spot, where I can be like, oh, Jack needs me right now, mom. I gotta go. So I have to remember like that I can kind of utilize that to
Mhm.
avoid the conflict. It feels like I'm running away from what I really need to work on with my mother is the converse, like where I have the ability to like be straight with her, but I don't think she's open to that.
Oh, that doesn't
So,
matter though.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
because then you're managing her response, right? So you
Right.
know you're pretty clear, it sounds like, about how to handle it or what you would like to see. But
Hmm.
then if we switch to where we're also managing the other person's response,
Yeah.
you can't manage both. Like if you try to do both, then you stay stuck, right?
Right.
Can't move forward. So
Right.
her response is that's in her realm.
Hmm.
That's why I like to take accountability for anything like, look, mom, I want to have a better relationship with you, right? That's my goal. And so I want to share something with you that I think would make our relationship better, right? There are some things that I think that you might go into because you love and care about me. Like when you start telling me what I should be doing or shouldn't be doing or that stuff. And I know the intention is good. I believe that, at least that the intention is good. But what you might not realize is that the effect that that has on me is probably opposite of what you're trying to do. So going forward, I'd like to request that you ask me more questions or let's talk about things, but just asking not to constantly feel like you have to come in and tell me what to do. You know, you could say, "Hey, have you thought of this?" or something like that. I'm not trying to like police your conversation, but I don't know if you know that has this effect on me, so I'm just requesting that, right? And then you leave it. And if she gets upset, you know what to do. And if she goes, "Oh, honey, that's not what I ever wanted to do," and blah, 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 but then she'll do it again because she can't help herself because that's what she does. So instead of having an aha moment, "Hey, you're doing that thing again," I like to just, that's the moment that I'm busy. "Hey, mom, I hate to interrupt, right? But I have to take this call. I've been waiting for this call." Or do you know what I mean? Like, because if it becomes, you're doing that thing that I asked you not to do. Why are you doing that thing? Well, now we have conflict, right? Because we
Yes.
teach people how to treat us. So we're teaching her, just not going to be available for that. No, I'm
Right.
not angry at you, not upset that you went back to something that you're probably going to go back to. So go ahead.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So Bridget shared something. She said that she found that no contact, if it's initiated from anger, guilt, and regret, will be woven into that in a way that feels almost impossible to separate. It is only from an intention of true self care that the separation can feel just, safe, and clear. Michelle?
Well, it's so dead on what Bridget was saying because I was feeling the same thing because I've witnessed I have a friend whose sibling has gone no contact with a huge portion of the family, and it's all politics related, and social media it has amplified it to no end, and it's all out of anger and it's just all these ugly emotions. It's none of it's been worked through in a healthy way. It's not that
Mm-hmm.
she's looked at her family or talked to her family or had any kind of healthy conversation with her family about like, oh, this is what bothers me and can we find a healthy, all the things that you were just talking to Trish about, like finding a healthy path to. She's done none of that. It's all out of rage fueled by politics and social
Mm-hmm.
media. So it is the exactly what Bridget is saying is that it's such an unhealthy way to go no contact because it's like
Mm-hmm.
you're actually being the bully, you're actually being the problem versus us. We've tried and we're trying working together and we're all being, having compassion for each other. So it's like, I think what you're talking about with Trisha is the other end of it, which is the end of self-care where it's like self-preservation and you have to protect your heart and your space and they're two very different places, right? So I don't know. I just thought I'd echo the sentiments of what Bridget said because that was powerful.
Yeah, no. And that's true, right? The thing is that what's interesting about this, the whole idea of going no contact, is that it's because you're trying to avoid something, right? You're trying to get something out of your life. But if you face your fear of confrontation and you learn how to get clear and have boundaries, right? And the boundaries are what we were talking about with, oh, I gotta run. I'm not I'm not giving the other person the boundary to hold. I'm going to hold my boundary, but I can do it softly. I don't need to run around with a bat and beat people over the head with it. This is about me managing me. It's not about me managing you. And a lot of times I think people go no contact because they want the relief without doing the relational work. So if you were to now start figuring out what parts of your relationships you want to keep and what parts you want to dial down, and you start doing that, one of two things is going to happen. Either that's going to create space in your relationship and you're going to have a much easier experience. The other person could even meet you halfway now that this tension is being released, or they could become more and more uncomfortable around you not being able to play out their toxic patterns, that they start going away from you. And you never had to, quote unquote, go no contact. I don't think I ever told my mother, I'm going no contact, or, anything like that, because I just would call out maybe what was happening. Look, I can't do this with you. I can't do this with you. And I'm not going to do it. Because usually at that point, there was, a complete dumpster fire happening. So it was very obvious why. So, and then what's the other thing? The other thing is that sometimes we have to do no contact temporarily, right? Sometimes that's a temporary thing. And then you see that somebody has done some work or they've come back and been accountable, they've reached out, and you give it a try again. People are afraid of that, not because they're afraid of the other person, but because they're afraid of themselves. They're afraid if I let this person back in, I'm not going to hold my boundaries anymore. And I'm going to go down and spiral down swirl the same drain. But if you have confidence in yourself, then you have the resilience to see, can we have more connection? If not, it'll become very apparent as long as you don't abandon yourself. There's also this idea, especially amongst us codependents, is if they loved me, they should just know. They should just know that them saying these things or talking this way or being this way upsets me, and they should stop. Right? There's that all or nothing thinking too, of like either I'm all in or I'm all out. But there's not a lot of growth in that. And that is that retaliatory aspect that Bridget was talking about with, you know, now I'm mad, I'm upset, whatever. That's given me the fuel to then cut something off, cut someone out. And then a lot of times when people come back down from that anger, they don't know how to go forward. So no contact can sometimes be just be an attempt to solve an internal problem with an external action. And what most people are missing is how to communicate clearly without escalating, how to tolerate discomfort, how to hold a boundary when it's not received well, and how to regulate themselves through hard conversations. And nobody likes this stuff. I mean, let's be real. Nobody likes this stuff. I mean, even thinking about some of this stuff, like my stomach can start to go into knots, like nobody likes having confrontation. Nobody likes hard conversations. But those are the things, those are the opportunities for growth. And every person in my life who is a friend or a family member that we have gone through hard conversations where I went into it going, I have no idea what's going to happen on the other side of this. I'm just going to be as soft and clear and ask a lot of questions and own my stuff and see where it goes. Those conversations, when they go well, build more connection and trust in yourself and your relationship than anything else you could ever do. And if it goes badly, it doesn't mean that you did it wrong. It can be that it's just showing you what was there all along. That you kept projecting the chance of some kind of other relationship that was maybe never going to happen. And now the painful part is letting go of that dream, that the imagined relationship that maybe one day, that's a big one with parents, right? Maybe one day my mother will actually see me. Maybe one day my mother will say more things that are uplifting about me than point out everything she feels I do wrong. Mothers and daughters have very complex relationships, and so do sons and fathers and sons and mothers. I mean, it's not limited. But having awareness before you take action and trying to slow down. What is your interpretation of what's happening versus maybe a more a more pulled back lens of what are the actual facts of what's happening? Anybody have anything to add or questions? I know Lou said that they're finding themselves on both sides of this going no contact situation. So I have too been on both sides. Neither side is really fun. I do feel like I have more options if I'm on the side of wanting to go no contact versus somebody doing it to me. Not a lot of options there. And sometimes setting boundaries with people, that is how they will retaliate. They will retaliate by, if you're no longer going to be my emotional regulator or any other thing that you have, way that you have served me, then I'm going to make you pay. And it's unfortunate. Yeah, 10 years no contact with your mom. So have you recently gone back to talking to her? Is that what's happening now? Trying to. Yeah. So this is perfect for you right now then, because if you, that means that you're kind of going back into what drove you away and now stepping back in and holding this in a way that doesn't give yourself away, but also is here to see, is there any touch point that we can foster and keep this going without opening the floodgates to what the reasons that I left in the first place? Bridget, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I don't think you and I have ever talked about like how it actually happened. I too don't have any contact with my mother, and it happened very organically, if that's a way. You know,
Yes.
there was I called her up one day. She was very angry about something and took it out on me. And I remember hanging up the phone and just thinking, oh, I don't think I'm going to call her anymore. Not, I'm never talking to her again. I just was like, it was very, I was upset at at the time, but I just thought, oh, I don't think I'm going to do that again. And I've never heard from her. And she told people she didn't know why I was mad at her, which clearly she did if you're out saying that. Um, uh, and I remember at the time, as time went on, most of the people that struggled with my decision there were other women. There
Yes.
was a lot of, but it's your mother, but it's your mother, but
Yes.
it's your mother. And it wasn't until I could sit back and say, do you think anyone's saying to her, but it's your daughter? Like, how could you have done those things?
Mm-hmm.
But it's your daughter, but it's your daughter. And as soon as I could flip that, was what, it kind of was empowering to me too, to be able to say that because but it's your mother didn't hold the same weight and I
Mm-hmm.
know people were just trying to, self-defend decisions they were making because most of the time it was for people with toxic mothers that were doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the first time this was happened in 2008. So the first time I then heard from her was about 10 years ago, and she sent me a Facebook request. It's so sad. Um, and I just thought, Nope, that's not the way we get to enter back into our life." Little voyeurism there. Uh, but recently, around Christmas time, I realized that I have taught quite a few family members that my value to them is what I provide when I buy things and stuff like that. And when I said to them, "Oh, you're all adults this year. We're not going to do that. We'd really just love to spend time together, have a meal together, go out to dinner together." I didn't hear from them again, and I still haven't. And
Mm.
I'm right at that point where I don't know about like having the hard conversation or the realization like, okay, that's where my value was. That's not something I'm going to be comfortable with. It didn't feel like I was setting a boundary again at that time. It just felt very organic. And so now it's like, wow, I will miss them. I don't really want to spend the rest of my life not seeing my nieces and nephews, but it was
Mm-hmm.
quite hurtful.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my Christmas list. Oh, you're 24 years old. That's not happening. Oh, family.
And
Um,
then you trying to reach out in other ways, you're saying got no response.
yes, it was kind of like, you know, that's not what's going to happen this year. My husband's having some surgery, so maybe we can
Mm-hmm.
all have a meal. We're all adults now, so we'd rather spend time together, blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
that was it. There's there's been nothing. You send a text message and you just don't
Mm-hmm.
hear stuff. And I was like, okay. So it doesn't feel like the big conversation is an option
Mm-hmm.
in that situation. Uh,
Do you feel uncomfortable or comfortable? I'm just curious,
hmm.
sending out a specific date and time to get together Or would you have, if this is, you know, whether, hey, I would love to get together. How does the weekend of such and such look? I can cook here. We could come here, or we could go miss you guys, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I think I might be worried about the realization that even that might be then like that really there's no interest in if my wallet isn't open. I don't have value to someone. It's so hurtful, right?
Sure.
Like people that I helped raise. And
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting to see. It has changed how I care for people in other situations.
Mm-hmm.
Not haven't always reined it in, but I
Yeah.
can see when that is, where I'm putting my value into that too.
Mm-hmm.
It's been interesting.
Can I chime
Uh,
in quick?
I also would say that two things to consider and just, maybe think on. One is I don't think there's probably a more selfish group than people in their early 20s. Um, they are so self-obsessed that I would, I don't expect much from them. Um, it's not true of everyone, anybody in their early 20s listening, but it it is a time in life where people are on, really self-obsessed and focusing on what they're doing with their life. There's so many things. The other thing is that when we face the thing like you're so dialed in and connected to how you feel about this, what happens is that when we look at that fear of I'm kind of afraid to do that, to put that out there and say, hey, be specific. And how about this? And how about this weekend? And what do you guys think? Because I'm afraid that I'll crickets, I won't even
confirmation.
hear back, right?
Yeah,
Or
confirmation.
confirmation, right?
That is how they were feeling. Damn it.
Right. But without taking that risk, you are living as if that's true. And the fear of that being true that pain can also shape how we interpret their actions. You could be right or you could be hurt. And so I always think it's going to sound funny, but I always think of that 38 Special song, Hold On Loosely, but Don't Let Go. It's such the perfect line because it releases judgment from them. It releases the interpretation that hurts you. And it allows the time and space for things to be what they're going to be. It's very vulnerable to put that out there. Let's get together. But one of the reasons is that there's a manager from IFS, right? A part that's like, oh my God, are you going to get hurt? Are they going to hurt you really bad? Like, because you love them and they're going to hurt you. But that's already put an interpretation of what comes back. If it's anything other than, yes, oh my God, we've missed you. If it's, oh, I can't, I got, stuff going on that weekend, or then that's just going to go through that lens of see, see, see.
It was it, I did feel like I could sit outside of it and go, oh, well, this is what you've taught them. This is what you thought you had to offer.
But that's still
So
judgment of you.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
You were
But
a
it
great
it put
aunt.
in
You were
it
a
did
great
put in a
aunt.
separation, you know, in the in the I don't know, in the whole conversation. But it's interesting.
No, it's so relatable. Like, I gotta tell you, it's so relatable. So I'm so grateful that you brought it up. And look, there's no one way to do anything. It's just more of an invitation to, like, maybe just look at what that would look like and see how you feel about doing something like that. Because a lot of times when we think we were very clear, right? We'll be like, hey, I am not going to do presents this year, but like, I'd love to see you guys and maybe do experiences together, like get together, stuff like that. And then we wait, but it's kind of like a hanging thing because we never set a day or time. And I'm not saying that you never did this. I'm just using this as a potential example. So we think that we were more clear than maybe we were. And we're waiting for the other person to show up, but they're like, oh, okay. And they're kind of like in that limbo place too. And then both people are in limbo, and then nobody ever makes the next move. So, if there's not anything else, I wanted to jump over to Lou because, oh, awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Bridget. Lou, you had more that you wanted to share, I think. So, oh, okay. Not sure if her audio is working. Okay. So, yeah, I know that you have kids in their teens and going through all that stuff with teenagers. Um, but you were talking about your mom. Oh, and their kids are in their 20s. Okay. So, and you were talking about your mom, but I'll just say that managing your emotions around any kind of interaction with your emotions can be a really good map or guide to let you know when, okay, this has gone in a direction that now is a direction that's not where I want to be. So you can start to use that as that's the time that I got to get off the phone, right? When I start to feel maybe I'm not clear about why even, I don't even know, but my emotions are getting activated. So that's the time as soon as you feel that to get off the phone. And then when you get off the phone, reflecting on it, you might get more clear about what it was in that conversation when you started to feel what you felt. Um, okay. And, if somebody's getting angry at you, if your mom gets mad at you, then you've stayed on the phone too long. That's how I feel, right? Like if somebody is like raging against you or mad at you, you can ask questions. Oh, whoa, 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 wait a second. What are you upset about? Right? But if it's just going to be a browbeating, you got to go. It's not helpful. Even if you are wrong, even if you're in the wrong, it's not helpful because once everybody's activated and throwing their arrows over the wall, nothing's moving forward. So, Kat says that she totally identifies with Bridget and in her last job, she was able to get people concert tickets and sports tickets. But when those perks stopped, so did the relationships they had with me. Certain friends and family members stopped reaching out. It hurts, and it still does. So I want to invite the idea that what if that was just a really easy way to also keep connection, right? What if that was something that, oh, wow, Aunt Kat is so cool. She can get us concert tickets, and there's a feeling of connection in that. And then when that goes away, especially if we come from families that have a lot of, you know, toxic patterns, if there's other pulls and stories going on, then they could have lost that ability to have that connection with you because that one was developed and clear and now it's gone. And they don't have the emotional fortitude or even awareness to find a new way. And because we're afraid of being hurt, we could pull back too, but we only see the other person pulling back. We don't necessarily see us. And just so you know, like I'm using little pieces here to create my own stories as examples, these aren't examples specific to anybody. But that's why the vulnerability piece is always so important. Like where am I blocking myself? Where am I afraid to be vulnerable? And I think that this brings up something too, is because the longer that this type of thing goes on, the harder it is to reconnect, right? So when we're looking at going no contact, it might feel good right now in the moment. And again, I'm talking about relationships that are just uncomfortable. These are not abusive relationships, right? Maybe a mother's toxic or in the way that they talk or whatever, but like abusive relationships are very different. But if this is like an issue with connection, with people treating us in a way that we've allowed them to treat us and now we need to change, doing the work is going to be so much better for you. It's going to build up your resilience. It's going to build up your self-trust. And sometimes it's kind of good to look at what is the long-term impact? If I cut this person out or I cut these people out of my life and go no contact, that'll feel good now maybe. But what does that look like 5 years from now? What does it look like 10 years from now? Will I be happy with this decision? Am I afraid that I'll regret it? And that's where, if you do the steps, if you start doing steps where you're starting to just work on you, then there's no real chance of regret because you didn't avoid anything. You faced it, you went forward. And if that's where it ended up, then that's not just on you. You did what you could. What happens in the case of illness or death or someone having children, like now maybe you have a sibling that's now married and having children. Is that still going to be a good decision for you? So a good thing to ask is, are you at peace with this decision long term? Or does it feel like just temporary relief? And because, Bridget you and I have talked about the mother thing before, neither one of us ever questioned our decision long term because of our experience. We may have looked at like what will happen in these times and what will happen if I hear that, my mom's not well or things like that. But the actual decision wasn't really a choice. It was a necessity. So I want to go over again, we've touched on this already, but some alternatives to going no contact, which is, again, it's more structured boundaries, topic limits, time limits. If going over to a relative's house for the holidays is always a huge drama mess, but it's like expected of you, and then it creates all this tension, just stop doing it. Or go, look, guys, I want to have a family talk before the holidays and say, hey, I really love seeing you guys. I do notice that it does typically end in a lot of drama. So I don't really enjoy that part. I don't think anybody else enjoys it. So if there's some hard conversations or some bitterness or some things that you guys need to talk about, maybe realizing that you need to have these conversations before or after the holidays, and just requesting that everything doesn't get aired out at Christmas dinner so that we can all have a good time, right? You set it up. And the beauty in that is not so much to affect them. It's because then if you go and it does turn into the same drama, right? You have the you can leave early and everybody will know why. You don't have to make any announcements. You don't have, right? You can just leave early. You can turn down the invitation the next year. You can say, look, like I don't want to do this. I tried. If you guys get some help, maybe get some therapy or do some work, and you want to try again, then sure, we can try again. Maybe not at the holiday, some other dinner, and just see how we can get through it. But I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want my kids exposed to this, right? There's a lot of reasons. And remembering that you have dominion over yourself and what contact that you allow. And practicing these new ways of communicating, people will be like, where'd you learn that? Why are you talking weird? Right? Like, who told you to say that? What are you in therapy? People will feel judged sometimes. They might be prickly. People are terrified of change. If you change at all, that will make them very dysregulated. They won't know what that means. A lot of times, immediately it goes to them becoming self-focused and feeling like if you're talking more calmly and rationally, then that's just somehow calling me out for the fact that I'm emotional and loud, right? So now I have to attack you in order to feel good about me. It's very, very dynamic. So it's important for you to feel going into this that it doesn't matter how other people interpret it, right? Don't get dragged in to other stuff. Just stay in your, as Brene Brown talks about, it's like the perfect description. You don't puff up, you don't shrink back, you just stand in your sacred space. So that, I feel, is the best visual and emotional place to land. And practicing these new communication patterns, they're big, but when you do it, it's like eye-opening. And all of this builds self-trust. It teaches you skills that you'll need in all your relationships. It prevents regret. And it clarifies for you whether no contact is truly necessary. Because you want to know that you tried consciously, not reacted unconsciously or reacted in anger. So I think this is a good moment if there's any any more questions or anything anyone wants to add in their personal experience or things that have worked for them or things that haven't worked. Like, yeah, I tried this and that was a hot mess.
I will say, Christine, like one of the things that felt so empowering for me, um, that I learned from one of my other brilliant friends is that when we set a boundary, we have to be willing to lose something. And at first, that I was like, what? Like, because the power felt in here's my boundary. But once I was able to realize how empowering it was to go, this is what I'm willing to lose, that friendship, that person, that what I thought misinterpreted as connection, that actually is where the empowerment came in. And it changed how I look at what setting a boundary means because we tend to think of it as a line in the sand and an electric fence. And right. And it's so different than that. But
Mm-hmm.
that also plays into what we see on social media. Right? Like
Absolutely.
that's how they're using the word boundary, and it's so misinterpreted. And we feel the power and the anger of like, I'm not gonna let that happen ever again. And here's,
Mm-hmm.
me beating my chest and, but being able to say, and then I rarely ever have to say that boundary to another person because it only exists within myself. And I know what feels comfortable. And there's that a pause there. Right. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not setting a boundary in the moment. I already know where the edges are to play around in instead of, because in the moment, it's not a boundary, it is the electric fence.
Yes.
That's been so empowering for me.
You know, I had a hiccup happen with a new friend where I had said something that I felt then, oh no, this is going to be taken wrong because I didn't express it in the way I wanted to. It was very nuanced. This was a big conversation. And then I spun out and I couldn't fix it. And I felt some judgment and I understood the judgment because I didn't talk very clearly. And I left that, I left that meeting feeling totally defeated because I knew it had originated with me. I also felt like there was energy that already existed in the other person that what I said tapped into. And so I get, I don't know about you guys, but I just want you to know I have a huge physical and emotional response to these types of situations. I do not breeze through, skipping through all of this stuff like it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect me. La di da, right? It does affect me. It affects me in a big way. I just know that the only way forward is through. I have to go through because otherwise the avoidance is its own bag of worms, right? So, and by going through, I actually give other people the opportunity to show up in a way that I maybe hadn't before out of fear that they wouldn't. It just makes everything more clear.
And you never really know what narrative or player you are in someone else's story. Like
Exactly.
my mother's spent her life as quite a martyr. Like nobody's had a harder life. Just ask her.
Mhm.
So her children not speaking to her fills a narrative she started long before that happened. Like it's very Sandra Bernhardt.
Yeah,
Woe is
self-fulfilling
me.
prophecy.
And when I step back, that becomes not me. Like
Hmm.
me and her story is not actually me. It has nothing to do with me.
Yeah. But a lot of times we as children of someone like that are actually raised to believe that that is our responsibility to make our parent feel better.
Yeah.
Like we are part of their emotional regulation, and that's our job.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And look, these patterns don't just live in families, they show up everywhere. Avoidance versus the idea of avoidance versus getting clarity shows up in relationships, in business, in your self-worth. This is the exact reason, like these conversations and these skills are the reason that I even put the Path to Freedom practice together that I just launched, because this stuff actually it's not sexy. It's not sexy. It's not fun. It's not like anything that even it would be hard to even express to people the changes that these shifts bring to people's lives, like the lightening of the weight and burdens of the way we see ourselves and the way we see others. So, learning how to understand our patterns and respond differently instead of reacting from them changes everything. So, Kat, you got your hand up. Jump in, jump in.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Hi, I'm sorry I'm driving, but yeah, I had a situation that came up recently. As you know, I know you know, but like I have no contact with a lot of my family members because I had no contact with one. She made sure I had no contact with anybody. So my biggest fear was like other people walking out of my life, other people, that's it's always been with me and with my kids especially. And, I had a situation that happened with them like 3 years ago, and I never really addressed it with them because I didn't want to upset either side. I didn't want this one to get mad and not talk to me or leave my life, and I didn't want the other one. So I kind of just never really addressed it. And this has been 3 years now since that incident has happened. And the other night we were all at dinner, and my oldest daughter just starts something stupid happened. She was showing some currency that she had, and I'm like, oh my God, look at this. And my other daughter and her boyfriend were looking at it, and she just threw this big, huge fit, threw it to the side. And my daughter obviously was upset. So my younger daughter left, and I went off on her, and I was so upset with myself too, because I'm like, oh God, here we go. Like I'm going to lose everything. And yeah, she hasn't talked to me in 2 weeks now, but I was like, I just lost it because I'm like, I'm tired of just walking around and just like baby steps and not wanting to hurt anyone's feelings.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm like, that was my biggest fear. And now my biggest fear happened. And I thought like, normally I would be like, oh my God, like feel sick. Like I need to reach out. I need to fix this. And I have not had that feel to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
it worries me.
Well, look, here's the thing. When we don't address it, one of the things that you're really highlighting is that when we don't address these things, they fester.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go away. They don't, like, so many people, so many of us, like, that's our operating system, right? Well, don't touch it, don't talk about it, just avoid it and eventually hope it just goes away. But you've sounds like in some ways you've been stuck there, right? Still stuck in that place from 3 years ago. It was a big thing that sounds like it hasn't shifted. And it's been more of like that, don't touch my sunburn. Like it's,
But it's funny because it's like, I have tried to move past it, and I feel like I've moved past it. My youngest daughter, who was a big part of being, she was a big part of it. She has moved past it, and she is no longer like, like doing her jabs or like, or getting reactive when my oldest gets reactive. It's just my oldest that has not like and I understand like why that she's upset. Like I still get that. And, this one thinks that I'm taking their side and this one thinks that I'm taking their side. And, I just want them to be respectful to each other when they're in the same room,
Hmm. Well,
but it
I
doesn't
don't
seem
know
like,
what it looks like to move past it, what that
yeah,
actually means for you or what that actually means for your daughter, because
yeah,
it's not about individually moving past things. It's about how are we relationally together processing this? Because put it this way, um, it's a totally different scenario, but my ex-husband was very emotionally and psychologically abusive. When he would have a big flare up, right, where he was like being a complete ass, right? An hour later, he's acting like nothing ever happened. He's fine. We aren't fine. The family isn't fine. He's fine. Then he's angry that other people have had a response to his being an ass. And now, what's wrong with you? Why the long face? Why are you being weird? So, what's important is that everybody has the ability to say how they feel, talk about it. We stay in the truth, right? Because if it becomes fragmented, that's not relational either. And if somebody says, "Well, I'm over it. What's wrong with you?" That's not allowing that someone else's experience could be very different. And that can create resistance. So now, oh, you're fine. She's fine. I'm not fine. And so I am now becoming overly reactive because now I'm the problem. And this never got healed in any real way. I want to clarify that does not mean that bad behavior doesn't have consequences, but without a container for that to go, without look, you obviously still have a lot of feelings around this. And I want to acknowledge them. I don't think that this is the time and place for this, but let's get together and talk about it. If your stomach gets in knots at the idea of the three of you sitting down and talking about this, there's been no healing. This has not healed. It's just been put on the back burner in the hopes that time will just carry it away. And I think that that's important because this is where, if we're in a situation like this, it's the difference between having self leadership or giving our power away and hoping. And self leadership is something that other people will be able to rely on too. Like once you start to get into that space, then it actually regulates other people because you're so clear and you're not avoiding anything. Then other people start to trust that space more. When they don't trust the space, or there hasn't been a universal healing, or it's been something avoided, then you can get very big responses. Does that make
yeah,
sense?
yeah, it does. It does. There definitely does not, the healing that has needed to happen has definitely not happened. Um,
And look, when you've experienced being so hurt by the
yeah,
people closest to you,
yeah,
cutting you out of their life, leaving you, that's, I mean, that can seriously cause some PTSD, right? So to think that we are not affected by that, I mean, I think you acknowledge that that leads to this fear of being left by the people that you love. But that fear will actually create more situations because you won't feel confident and you won't be able to step into that leadership and be willing to allow your children, if that's the ones we're talking about, to pull away from you and come back, right? And then when it just builds up until it's a big explosion, then it probably is not creating that new environment that would lead to healing, right? So now
Right.
it's like hot potato, right? I've got it, you've got it, she's got it. It's bouncing back and forth and back and forth. Where what we really want is we really want to clear this as much as we can. And that's limited on everybody's part, but
Yeah.
knowing your part and being clear about it and being clear about what you want to offer and how you want to lead this, that's going to be the biggest thing. And we avoid this, right? Because boundaries are uncomfortable. It's not a sign that they're wrong,
Yeah.
but they're
It just makes it,
uncomfortable.
yeah, it makes it so, it makes it uncomfortable. Like being together is no longer like a pleasant time. Like
Because the
all of us
elephant's in
together.
the room.
Yeah, it's like there's no longer, and also I don't know how my oldest is going to react. Like I don't know it because she has a very explosive personality. So I don't know like what I'm dealing with when I get into a situation. I'm always like on guard.
Well, that's why if you heard me talking earlier, it's really important that you're not trying to manage
Yeah.
the other people too. You have to be clear about you. You can be open to hearing, you have to stay open. But if it gets 0 to 60, all it means is like, okay, we can't have this conversation right now, but let's try another time. Let's try again, right? Let's come back in an hour. Let's everybody take an hour break and let's meet back here now. Whatever you need to do, but you have to be the leader. No,
Yeah.
you're the mom, so you're already in the leadership position. But you're afraid, possibly, that being a leader means disconnection, means that you're the authoritarian. You're not the friend. You're not cool. You're not easy, right? You're not making it easy for them to love you or be around you. But it's a confusing message because the only person that can emulate that role, that can show that role is you. So facing what is holding me back from stepping into that role. What story do I have? Because I can tell you with every fiber of my being that stepping into that role in a way that's grounded and wise and calm and clear is the most healing thing that you can do for your family and for yourself. And so, first, you're going to have to look at what's holding me back from that. What story do I have around that?
Yeah. I need to do that because I just my fear is like I'm going to lose all these relationships. I'm going to end up, alone or whatever. That's my fear, and that's why I'm not addressing it. And I need to deal with that as well. But
Well,
thank you.
because, yeah, well, because if we don't deal with it,
Yeah.
it can turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy because
Yeah.
we keep
Mhm.
doing the same patterns that were demonstrated for us in some ways. Like, I mean, I, I know that you have changed a ton. Like, you are not the environment that you grew up in, that you have changed a ton. It doesn't mean that we don't have our blind spots. It doesn't mean that there's not areas that we really need to look at. So I truly believe that is the question, and that's the area that I would focus on first. Before I focus on my kids, I'm going to focus on me. What am I doing? Where do I need to apologize? Where do I need to be the leader? Where do I need to hold the space for this and allow them to take the time, whatever they need to take in order to get there, but I'm just going to keep holding this vision and holding this space so that there's a place for this to shift, because it's not going to shift between them.
Yeah, no, it's not.
And look, cutting off people is often easier than learning how to stay connected differently. Um, and this just can get bounced around. The parent does it, then the kid does it, then like the thing we want is to get off that
Yeah.
wheel.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to get off that wheel.
Well,
But thank
you're going to
you.
be in the path to freedom practice, so
Yeah.
we have time
Yeah.
to really go into these. And look, just like we talked about now, like the first step in this would not be to talk to your kids. It wouldn't be, it's to what is going on in me, and becoming more aware of the stories, aware of how the stories affect us, and then what choices we're making, and how that might not be creating the response that we're looking for. So,
Yeah.
any last words from anyone before we wind down?
In that situation, Christine, like I understand being the leader, but I also understand that our suffering as a parent is we want them to get along, and that may not, they're they're two different people.
Oh, yeah.
That may never happen. So when do you start to look at the boundary of, oh, it's best for me right now to have a relationship, this relationship over here and this relationship over here,
Mhm.
and just keep, working on myself and having to let go of the fact that it's not my job to make sure that it's that they're sisters. They have to get along. They're sisters because
Yeah.
it's that that's going back to that same thing, but she's your mother.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
when do we then go, well, I failed because my kids don't get along? And how do we work on those things that we tell ourselves that are so not true? And then also fulfilled, what narrative are we placing people
Yes.
in?
What is our expectation? And
Mm.
being a leader doesn't mean you're telling people what to do, right?
Mhm.
So it wouldn't be you two have to get along. Like, you're going to have to figure it out. This is what I want. I want a family who's whole. So you're going to have to figure this out. Again, that's actually feeding what you don't want, because that's not expansive and it doesn't give people the ability to step in when they're ready. It creates an expectation, and the expectation is around you and what you want. And it's kind of, in a way, saying, I don't really care what you want. I don't really care what you think and feel. I don't like this. It's not right. And you're going to have to deal with it, and you're going to have to do it. And it just creates more of what you don't want. So it's just not even working for you at the end of the day, right? Even if like your goal is to have them be friends, the way it's going about is actually working against you, even though that's what you want. So yes, I agree that you have to let go of the expectations. So the reason why I was squirrel brain, the reason why I was bringing up the issue with the friend I was saying that I had was that going into the conversation that I ended up having with her, I had to let go of the friendship. Not because I knew she wasn't going to be my friend anymore. It was because letting go of my expectations that she had to listen to me now, and she had to see things the way that I wanted to clarify, and she had to accept my apology and explanation. If I went into it with that energy, then I wouldn't be able to be grounded and clear, because I'd be trying to affect her. But if I went from, I'm just going to lay this out. I have no control over how you see it or what you pick up, but I'm going to be as clear and as open as possible. And I've already let go of it going in. I've already braced myself and allowed myself to let go of this so that I can be more present and I can be in my own body and not try to manage you. So, and then I'm not saying, Kat, that like if you have an explosive daughter, that you wouldn't choose your language as softly as possible. Like, of course, you're going to adjust to the things that you do know about the person, but you're just not going to hold responsibility for their response. You're going to do your best on your side and then just keep trying and keep holding that space and stepping into that leadership. And the reason I say leadership is because you're the parent and they're the kids. So they see each other as you are a resource that they're fighting for, and they see each other as getting more than the other one. So they're never really going to do this work for you. You need to just hold that space, and that includes letting go of the expectation that they'll be best friends, and letting go of the expectation that if I show any kind of leadership space and have anything that does not just make a clear road forward for them, that they're going to leave me and never love me. So working on letting go of that is first and foremost, but we do that in little baby steps. You can't, there's no conversation that's just going to change that. You just start testing your own limits and stretching in little tiny ways, because that's what builds the foundation under you so that you can have the bigger talks. If you go too fast, you'll just implode. Any other last remarks?
This was great, Christine. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes, thank you so much.
And for everyone that shared, like, you guys really.
Yes. Yes. Perfect. So if anybody is interested in working on the ways of addressing these kind of issues in their life, in their friendships, in their family, I just released the Path to Freedom practice. And right now, I extended the 50% off promo through Sunday this weekend, which is the 5th of April. So if you go to ChristineDicksonMentor.com and go to the Work With Me page, there's a link there, and you can sign up, or you could get on the list for the next enrollment. Enrollment is going to close soon, and then won't open again for at least 3 months. So either way, I feel very passionately about this subject. I've seen, like I said, it's not sexy, but I've seen the way it's changed people's lives. And when people can stop draining their energy in these ways, our relationships are so important to us. So when we get better relationships and we stop draining our energy gets to go to the things that we would like it to go to, which are the things that bring us joy, or, things that build us up in our careers or our profession, or doing some hobbies that we never get to do because we're spending 2 hours on the phone with a parent that's just ranting. So that's what I'm trying to work on, and what I'm going to teach people in that course, in that practice. It's actually not really a course, it's a practice. It's something that you do just a little bit every day. So it's not a fire hose of information. It's more like this slow stream, because that's what builds the foundation that you can use for the rest of your life. Thank you guys. Thank you for being so vulnerable, for being here. And if you have any questions that I can help you with just on the side, feel free to reach out to me. My email's on the path. C as in cat, H as in Harry, T as in Tom, on the path, CHT@gmail.com. All right. I'll see you guys in May. And I think that the topic might be around social media and our mental health. All right. I'll
That's a good
see you
one.
then.
Thank you.
Bye. You're welcome.